Today, we're going to call the meeting to order. Council is conducting this meeting in person and via conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Council meetings can take place in person as long as physical distancing of 2 meters can be maintained between participants. At this time, according to Alberta Health, public attendance at council meetings should be facilitated through virtual means. If you've submitted a comment request, the chair will call on you at the appropriate time. The chair may also ask for comments and concerns from the public relating to a particular topic. And at this time, phone lines will be unmuted. If you would like to speak, please state your name. We ask that only one member of the public speak at a time. All persons will be allotted 10 minutes to speak as per our procedural bylaw. We ask that if the meeting recesses, that any callers hang up and call back in as the meeting reconvenes. This helps with call quality. Please note this call is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website and/or social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the meeting. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may be removed at the discretion of the chair as per the Municipal Government Act, Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. And because we're conducting a hybrid meeting with some council in council chambers and some people connecting virtually, we'll conduct a roll call. Reeve Link is here. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Here in person.
Councillor Wilson sends his regrets. He had a family situation and wasn't able to be here this morning. And we send our condolences to their family. Councillor Wilson, or Councillor Baker. Here. Councillor Eichert.
Here.
Councillor Kester.
Here.
Councillor Armstrong. Pretty sure. Additionally, our voting procedure will be modified for our teleconference meetings. I will call for any councillor who is opposed to a motion to indicate verbally. For any motions with expressed opposition, we will conduct a roll call vote. We have an agenda before us. Does anybody have any additions or changes?
I have a couple in camera, just short information.
Under, do you have a topic? Or a VoIP or?
One's a landfill matter and one's sand and gravel.
Perfect. Our 1 o'clock appointment is going to reschedule. And as well, we had correspondence received from the CAO of the Wheatland Housing Management Board. We're going to add that under correspondence. We had another piece of correspondence that we're going to address in an already scheduled Section 6 under our closed section, intergovernmental WRC. And we do have 2 meetings for council to consider ratifying. We'll put that at 2.32. Any other additions or changes? If not, a motion to approve the agenda.
Also move.
Councillor Bigger has moved. Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We had the minutes from our regular council meeting of September 15th circulated in the package. Did anybody see any errors or omissions? If not, a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Councillor Armstrong has moved. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We had the minutes from the public hearing from September 15th included in the package. Did anyone see any errors or omissions?
Motion to approve.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved to approve. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to the public hearing for bylaw 2020-24. I move that the process for the Wheatland County Council meeting, as it pertains to the scheduled public hearings, will be as follows. Public hearing, first reading if required, then consideration for further readings of bylaw for those public hearings that have been closed. I further move that the above process will take place with the absence of resolutions to go into and out of council before and after each public hearing. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried. I'll call the public hearing for bylaw 2020-24 to order. Welcome. Does any member of the public have an objection to any councillor sitting on council for the public hearing? And can administration please verify that notice of the public hearing was circulated in accordance with the MGA?
We can.
Thank you. And are there any written submissions?
We received no written submissions.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Megan Williams here to present bylaw 2020-24. The package or the report starts on page 15 of council's package. The subject area is approximately 150 acres in size and is located about 15 kilometers northeast of Waialta and is directly adjacent to Rocky View County boundary. It's accessed from Township Road 264, and the location plan is on page 23 of council's package. The application is to designate 158 acres of the subject parcel from agricultural general to a new direct control district in order to facilitate more residential dwellings. Staff circulated the application to external agencies and internally and to landowners within 1 mile of the proposed redesignation. No comments were received from external agencies or adjacent landowners. The development officer had originally listed some corrections which were made prior to first reading. Staff is recommending 3 amendments to bylaw 2020-24 to move communal childcare and dwelling temporary from discretionary to permitted uses, and to add dwelling modular as a permitted use. This will keep the proposed direct control district consistent with the existing land use, and it also decreases the application review process for the applicant. The bylaw presented to council today contains those proposed changes. During first reading, council voiced concerns regarding the provision of water for communal developments. The variety of acts, regulations, and plans controlling water for a region require developments with 4 or more households per parcel to obtain a water license. This development is in compliance with those documents. The aerial imagery is on page 24 of council's package, and the existing and proposed development is on page 26. The developer, since submitting this application, has obtained a development permit for 4 single-family dwellings, which are planned to be located where the future 5-plex was planned to be located. So it's location 4 on the existing and proposed development plan. The residences are the only proposed development at this time. This proposal aligns with the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, Municipal Development Plan, and Regional Growth Management Strategy. So staff has recommended that council move to amend bylaw 2020-24 to move communal childcare and dwelling temporary from discretionary to permitted uses, and to add dwelling modular as a permitted use. And then staff is recommending second and third readings be granted to bylaw 2020-24 as amended. Council has 3 options before them. They can approve the recommendation, not approve it, or approve an alternate. This does conclude my presentation, and I am available for any questions.
Thank you, Megan. Do any persons in support of the application wish to speak? Anybody with concerns or opposed to the application who would like to speak? Any final comments from administration?
No final comments.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
Just for clarification, why do we need a separate title for that parcel? Why can't it be included within, or is it not part of the colony? Or am I looking at the wrong one? This is one. I'm on page 24. Is that,
Yeah, that's the right one.
so
Is that the cemetery?
just a question to staff, and why is that a separate, why isn't it included in the title of that?
Through the chair, is that just the little flag lot that's on the north boundary there?
Yes, I think that's what Councillor Armstrong's referring to.
Okay, yeah, that is the cemetery.
And that was a requirement to do that separately, if I recall.
It is its own parcel. I believe the map I have, the cadastre isn't showing up correctly.
But I didn't, okay, I read this wrong then. When I'm reading this, we're talking about
Everything else.
something else, developing other buildings. I'm not talking about the cemetery. Why,
We're talking about everything inside the red dotted line, so that kind of cuts that little section out.
but if we're talking about everything in that red dotted line, that's a cemetery, right? No?
No, the cemetery is exempt from the redesignation.
This is what we're talking about as well. Oh, okay, sorry. My mistake. I got you now.
It's a good question. Like, it did look curious, so it's a good question.
I'm a little foggy. I was,
Symptom 1,
yeah, okay. Sorry about that.
clean up to the left.
Any other questions? Thank you for the presentation. I will close the public hearing for bylaw 2020-24. Council's wishes.
Make the motion that council move to amend bylaw 2020-24 Schedule A to remove communal child care and dwelling temporary from discretionary use to permitted use and to add dwelling modular as a permitted use.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Consideration for second reading.
I'll move second reading.
Councillor Eichert has moved second reading. As presented, I'm assuming. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Consideration of third reading.
I'll move consideration for third reading.
Councillor Armstrong has moved third reading. Any questions or discussion? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.1.2, bylaw 2020-35. I'll call the public hearing to order. Welcome, everybody. Does any member of the public have an objection to any councillor sitting on council for this public hearing? Want me to do it again? Does any member of the public have an objection to any councillor sitting on council for the public hearing? And can administration verify that notice of the public hearing was circulated in accordance with the MGA?
Yes, we can.
Thanks. And are there any written submissions?
There are none. No.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good morning, council members. Graham Allison here, presenting bylaw 2020-35 to redesignate 4 acres from agricultural general district to country residential district within southeast 21, 24, 26 west of the 4th. for the purpose of facilitating a future subdivision. The subject parcel, as seen on the location plan on page 32 of your agenda package, is located off Range Road 263, approximately 5 kilometers north of Cheadle. Staff have circulated this application to external and internal agencies, as well as adjacent landowners within 1 mile of the subject parcel. There have been no written submissions or objections to the file. Tentative plan on page 33 of your agenda package shows the subject parcel is 21.15 acres, currently used for hay farming, and contains a private dwelling, barn, and farm buildings. The area to be redesignated is currently undeveloped. There are plans for a private dwelling, private well, and private sewage disposal system, and the balance of the parcel will remain agricultural general district. The proposal generally aligns with the strategies, objectives, and policies within the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, the Regional Growth Management Strategy, the Municipal Development Plan, and the Country Residential District of the Land Use Bylaw. Administration is recommending that Council grant second and third reading to Bylaw 2020-35. That concludes my presentation. Thanks. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions about the presentation? Would anybody like to speak in support of the application? Would anybody like to speak with concerns or in opposition to the application? Any final comments?
No final comments from staff.
Thank you. With that, I'll close the public hearing for Bylaw 2020-35. Council's wishes.
Move set. Oh.
Councillor Eichert has moved second reading. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried.
I'll move third reading.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved third reading. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.1.3. Bylaw 2020-30.
Good morning again, everybody. Megan Williams here to present Bylaw 2020-30, found on page 36 of Council's package. The subject parcel is 86.45 acres in size and is located directly adjacent to the town of Strathmore's north boundary and is accessed from Highway 817. The location plan is on page 42 of Council's package. The application is to redesignate the whole parcel from agricultural general to rural business district in order to facilitate development permit applications for a variety of uses, including an entertainment venue and agritourism business. Staff circulated the application to external agencies and internally. External agencies had no concerns or comments that needed immediate addressing. WID requested future developments abide by their 30-meter setback, and Alberta Transportation provided no comments at this time. Any future discretionary use development permit will be circulated to Alberta Transportation, and permitted use development permit applications will require AT's permission. So Alberta Transportation will have an opportunity to comment on any proposed development at those times. The aerial imagery is on page 43 of Council's package. The applicant is proposing to change the use of the existing garage to entertainment venue where they'll host weddings. The agritourism events will occur throughout the property. The preliminary review of the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, Municipal Development Plan, and Regional Growth Management Strategy have not revealed any pressing concerns. Staff is recommending that Council grant first reading to Bylaw 2020-30, as the proposal generally aligns with the proposal generally supports the strategies, objectives, and policies within the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, Regional Growth Management Strategy, and Municipal Development Plan. Staff's recommendations can be found on page 36, and so staff is recommending that first reading to the bylaw be granted and the public hearing be scheduled for November 10th at 9 a.m. Council has 3 options before them. They can approve the recommendation, not approve it, or approve an alternate recommendation. That does conclude my presentation, and I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Council's wishes.
Motion for first reading of bylaw 2020-30
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved first reading as presented.
as presented.
Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried.
I'll move a public hearing for 2020-30 for November 10th.
Councillor Armstrong has moved the public hearing. Any questions? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to bylaw 2020-33.
Okay. Megan Williams back to present bylaw 2020-33. This report starts on page 45 of Council's package. The proposed redesignation encompasses the majority of 2/4 sections, totaling approximately 318.54 acres, with an access from Highway 840. The location plan is found on page 53 of Council's package. It is 1.6 kilometers south of the Nehill border and 6.3 kilometers north of Rosebud. The application is to redesignate the whole of or most of the 2/4 sections, from agricultural general to direct control district 3 in order to facilitate the development permit applications for multi-unit dwellings and the potential commercialization of some of their existing developments, such as the metal shop. Staff circulated the application to external agencies and internally. Future discretionary use development permit applications would be circulated to Alberta Transportation if they fall within the control distance. For permitted uses, we request the applicant include the roadside development permit obtained from Alberta Transportation. The aerial imagery is on page 54 and the current proposed developments on page 55. As their application is for redesignation, the applicant has since they submitted their application for redesignation, the applicant has obtained development permits for one manufactured building, as indicated on the proposed development plan at location 6. In addition to redesignating their parcel to the existing DC3 district, staff included a number of housekeeping amendments to include a definition for communal childcare, including the communal childcare use under permitted uses, clarification to the density district regarding single-unit dwellings, and then within the special regulation, staff clarified the number of permissible industrial operations per colony. The preliminary review of the Saskatchewan Regional Plan, Municipal Development Plan, and Regional Growth Management Strategy have not revealed any pressing concerns. Staff is recommending that Council grant first reading to bylaw 2020-33, as the proposal generally supports the strategies, objectives, and policies within the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, Regional Growth Management Strategy, and Municipal Development Plan. Staff is also recommending that the public hearing be scheduled for November 10th at 9 a.m. Our council has 3 options before them. They could approve the recommendation, not approve it, or approve an alternate recommendation. This concludes my presentation, and I am available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Council's wishes.
I'll move first reading.
Councillor Kester has moved first reading. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried.
I'll move a public hearing for 2020-33, scheduled for November 10th, 2020 at 9 a.m.
Councillor Baker has moved the public hearing. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.1.5.
Could we just go to, oh, here we go. Good morning again, council members. This is bylaw 2020-36 to rescind first reading of the amendment to DC 7. So on September 1st, 2020, bylaw 2020-36 received first reading to amend Cell 8 of Direct Control District 7 in order to facilitate the construction of a temporary outdoor skating rink. The bylaw was originally scheduled for September 15th, but since that date, the staff has determined a new site for the outdoor skating rink, and thus this redesignation will no longer be required. So staff is recommending that council rescind first reading of bylaw 2020-36 to add to amend Cell 8 of the Direct Control District. That concludes my presentation. Available for any questions. Thanks.
Council's wishes.
I'll make the motion to rescind first reading. Amended.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved to rescind. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.3.1. We'd like to schedule a planning and priority session for October 13th, following the Municipal Planning Commission meeting. That works for everybody? Just a motion to schedule it.
Moved.
Councillor
I thought
Armstrong.
we already had that done, but I'll put the motion on the floor.
I think we did the September one. But...
Okay.
I got a question.
Yep, please go ahead.
On page 60, the bylaw we just rescinded, I think, has a picture, I believe that is, of Severn Dam. Not Muirfield.
You're right, yes. So just for that, Muirfield, it's just got the wrong map.
Yeah, I don't
You're right,
think it
because I
means
remember
much.
thinking
It's just-
Severn Dam looked like a dinosaur. Thanks for bringing that to our attention, Glenn. You're absolutely right. So
Yes,
please disregard the
apologies
map.
on-
I think there's another
Yeah.
map. Let's hope it's the right one.
No, there's not on our stuff, there isn't.
There's not one there. Yeah, if you go to page 130 for the development permit for the new spot, you could see the correct map. I don't know if administration needs to speak to it, but that's the correct map, right? It would just refer to the section to the north of where that red spot is, right?
Yeah, just to council, we'll, on page 60, this map here, we'll just take it out of the report and
Yeah, so
put the correct one back in.
thanks for bringing that to our attention, Councillor Custer. So if council needs to, you could refer to the map on page 130, and it would just be the location. The bylaw that we're referencing is just north of that red dot and the blue arrow. So just for context. Thanks, Glenn. Councillor Armstrong has a motion on the floor to schedule planning and priorities for October 13th. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. There was 2 meetings that council was invited to. I think Councillor Armstrong has the details.
I'll move to, excuse me, I'll move that we ratify the attendance of councillors to the meetings September 3rd and September 16th. MLA meeting and meeting with Siksika Chief and Council.
Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.3, sorry, I had that a little bit out of order.
Question.
Go ahead.
Question. On the planning and priorities meeting for the 13th, I have a request.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be QP bargaining at the lodge that day. I think at 11. It's by Zoom. And if this one doesn't go through, it won't be the first one that hasn't gone through. But it's tentatively set for that day. My request would be, I'll attend, be part of the planning and priorities meeting. But if there happened to be something of interest, could we kind of juggle the agenda around to try and fit it in?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would have said something more about the date, but it's not a firmly set date, so I don't want to, affect everybody else's calendar either.
For sure. So let's look at the agenda for that meeting once it's confirmed, and then you can just note if there's anything that you want to make sure that, and then I can ensure that you're involved in those conversations.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I believe the meeting will probably start right after the MPC meeting, and because we don't know what the right exact start times are. So we'll do it at the time. Okay, thanks.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. And my apologies, Council. Probably the ratification of those meetings should have followed 2.32. I didn't turn my agenda over. My apologies. So we're a little bit out of order. We will move to RMA, Fall Convention, potential meeting with the Minister of Municipal Affairs. So CAO Henderson received correspondence indicating that if elected officials want to virtually meet with Minister Allard during the convention, we can submit requests prior to October 9th. And we just need to include the policy items or issues we would like to discuss with the minister and an estimate of how many people would be virtually attending the meeting. Council's thoughts. We do have coming up on the agenda under 4.34, we have drafted a letter to send to Minister Allard regarding the CMRB, and we are requesting an in-person meeting. Further to that, we did have a rural caucus meeting yesterday in Red Deer of the 7 municipalities in the Edmonton Metro and Calgary Metro regions. And if I understand correctly, we will be requesting a joint meeting of the 7 mayors and reeves of those municipalities with the minister as well. And with, I believe we decided with the premier as well. So my preference would be to request an in-person meeting, but I'm also hearing from other reeves in the area that they have outstanding requests for meetings going back to August that have not been responded to at this point. So I'm not sure if we want to do a dual approach and request this, but also request an in-person meeting, and if we would have different topics.
If we go virtual, does that put us back on the list for an in-person? It's important.
That's
very important that we have an in-person
weigh.
meeting. She can see the stain in my eyes for the city of Calgary. Did I say that? Oh, I apologize. But yeah, so I'm open to either. But if there's any opportunity that having a virtual meeting puts us down the list on an in-person meeting, then I'm against it. My opinion only.
I think we let her know that we really want to meet with her, but we don't like the virtual meetings because we definitely do want to meet with her. And like Tom said, if we meet virtually, does it put us down the list for the other one? Probably. They'll say, well, we've already met with them. So yeah.
So perhaps not request a virtual meeting, perhaps send the letter requesting the in-person meeting, and then we could follow up on that, perhaps with her chief of staff.
But make it very, very plain in the letter that we truly want to meet with her. We just don't want to do it on.
Yeah, and we did.
I won't be there if it's on the phone.
Yeah, and we did have a very brief opportunity to talk to her in Stettler at that meeting, and she was very rushed, leaving to catch a flight. She hadn't seen her husband since she had taken the minister's position. And she understood that we wanted to meet with her. I did have a chance to speak with her chief of staff longer, and he encouraged us to set up a meeting. So I think if we reach out and follow up with him, hopefully he can facilitate something, would be my hope.
I think it'll give us an opportunity to show Wheatland's unique situation in CMRB, whereas, you know, the other rural caucus are looking at as a whole. I think no matter what, we probably have the best case for not being there.
And I think, in retrospect, because if it can't be done here, do it there.
Yeah.
A little bit of mileage, but set it
Oh,
up.
it'd be worth the drive, for sure.
They can't make it down here. We'll show them that we're really serious about it.
So to do nothing, we do not require a resolution. If everybody's comfortable, we'll just, maybe just a motion to accept the request as information, so we deal with it. Councillor Armstrong is moving that we accept the information regarding from Stakeholder Relations Municipal Affairs as information. Any further discussion?
While we're on the subject of the RMA, which is going to be virtual this year, I would like to ask Administration Brian to reach out to maybe Rocky View, to maybe schedule a meeting during the RMA. Maybe we can, I have talked to one of their councillors, and just sort of why allow this to go to waste. I believe we should be reaching out to Rocky View. We've not really done a great job in the past on that, and I think they could be an asset to us. So I would suggest that, you know, they mentioned that maybe they have that room at the racetrack that they could get, you know, I don't know, just sort of I guess for lack of a better word, a bonding, get to know the people
It's called
better.
networking.
Sorry?
It's called
Networking
networking.
sounds way
Networking,
better
okay, yeah.
than bonding.
Yeah. I don't want to bond.
Well, because we will be missing just that in-person opportunity to discuss projects or ideas or ways to collaborate, things like that.
Yeah, like.
I don't mind the
think Tom
idea.
was talking about having like a big screen, you could watch what was going on and vote and do that kind of stuff too if it was.
I think they offered to set all that up, and they have a room that we can distance it.
But I don't know if the Reeve knew about it.
Oh,
Tom briefly just mentioned it just before the
Well, they're
meetings.
Reeve as well.
Oh, they're Reeve too?
Yes.
That's okay. The Reeves are always the last to know. That's fine. No, I think it's not a bad idea if we can do it and just maintain public health measures and do it safely, responsibly.
In his own meeting.
They've done it with some other conferences where you can't hold the full conference, but like smaller areas of different conferences have gotten together to still have some of that networking element, the collaboration, the discussion of ideas, that type of thing.
That has to start happening again. I know, I'll refer back to the Alberta Care one. That worked out. Not a problem in the world. That worked out great, and everybody was happy, and they got some good networking done during that. Worked out
Yeah, and
great.
it's not on my report for this month, but we had our district meeting in person on Friday. I'll report on it at our November meeting, but administration did a phenomenal job of organizing it. It was done, public health measures were followed. It was done very safely, and it was so good to see people in person and be able to.
And I think it's pertinent in the fact that now that we've taken over Muirfield, that
Yeah,
there could be some,
Synergies.
yeah, thank you, synergy around wastewater and in that area. So
Synergies.
if we, you know, every month that we let
Better
this kind of
speaking.
stuff sort of lapse, it's another month that we never catch up on. So if I can direct.
We currently have a motion on the floor. I think we'll just deal with this
Oh, yeah.
first. And then you can do a motion if you would like arising from this discussion, if that works. Okay. There's a motion on the floor just to accept the submission process for meeting with municipal affairs virtually as information. Any further questions or discussion on that item? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried.
I'd like to make a motion arising from this last one that the CAO reach out to Rocky View CAO and perhaps put together a meeting during RMA and see where that goes.
Any questions or discussion on the motion? Is any councillor opposed? Councillor Kester, I just want to make sure if you were are you trying to speak?
No, it wasn't me.
Okay, perfect. You never know with technology. I don't want to miss anything, so thank you. Motion is carried then. We'll move to 3.1, Reeves report. The information is in the package. A couple of things to highlight. We had an excellent AGM with Community Futures. MP Martin Shields, Chief Crowfoot, and Councillor Crowfoot joined us. I'm going to let Councillor Kester speak to the Wheatland Housing Board meeting, as he's the chair. Councillor Eichert, Deputy Reeve Clausen, and myself had a really good meeting. Siksika Chief and Council had extended an invitation to tour Old Sun College, which is was previously used as a residential school, and that was Reeve was not very professional there. It was very emotional for me. It was very difficult to hear what happened there and just the impacts, the intergenerational trauma that has resulted from that, and even some of the councillors' personal stories of how that's impacted their families, but also inspiring to hear that Chief Crowfoot's mother, her involvement with college over, I believe he said 31 years, I think he said, and just the way they've taken like a terrible piece of history and made it into something good for the community, and now it's contributing to success and healing and education for the Siksika Nation people. And also, you could tell that there was really diverse opinions on it. One of the councillors said that it was extremely painful for his father to drive by the college every day and be reminded on his way to work every day. But then Chief Crowfoot made a very good point that we do see people questioning the realities of history or even denying pieces of history. And so he said he wants it to stand as evidence of sort of the history that happened there. Following the tour and kind of the historical information, we did sit down and have a really good meeting with the chief and several other councillors. And it was a very high level, just a very preliminary conversation. They have a few areas, practical areas, transportation issues, things like that, where they're wondering if we might be able to provide letters of support to Alberta Transportation in terms of one was highway speed. I think there was some discussion around some bridges. You guys can jump in at any time. Things like that. And then we did they did discuss that they have a memorandum of agreement with the town of Strathmore, and they shared that with us. And one of the rationales for considering entering into a memorandum of agreement is it's one thing if we're sitting here and we're committed to being good neighbors and developing a relationship with Siksika, just as we are committed to doing that with Rocky View or the town of Strathmore or Nehill or, Newell or Starland, like all of our municipal neighbors, Vulcan, whatever. I think that's important. And even though they're not the typical structure of our other municipal neighbors, it's still important as neighbors to develop a relationship with them. And what Chief Crowfoot sees that memorandum of understanding doing is it entrenches that kind of commitment past the time when I'm sitting here and you're sitting here, and it makes that commitment so that future councils from Siksika and from Wheatland have sort of a foundation for working on that. So my hope would be that we'll maybe tell planning and priorities or a future council meeting, we can look at a memorandum of understanding, look at what council's wishes are. There were no commitments made on either side to anything, no requests, nothing like that. It was simply just a sharing of, are there ways that we can work together? And a little bit was talked about changing, like making the future better despite the past. And there really, as much as we did learn about history there was a lot of forward thought and forward focus as well. So I think it was a really positive meeting, and I'm very grateful that we had the opportunity to sit down with them. Happy to answer any questions.
I think too, the MOU for Strathmore, they were going to share with us too, to kind of give
I
us
was
an
going to
idea.
just ask that.
Yeah, give us an idea of what was
would
there,
go in it.
you know, as a basis.
And we do have it. I think I neglected to forward it to council, so I'll do that. I'll actually make myself a note because
Be good for planning priorities to review it, you know, before, for sure.
Councillor Breaker has for sure already sent it to me, so that was my
Perfect.
missing that to share that. So I will send that for sure. I have been participating just for my own interest in the FCM speeches and elections for vice president, table officer speeches. The Alberta, like the provincial elections were yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It's been actually really great. The speeches are all online. They're all virtual. You vote virtually. It's very efficient. And a lot of their work has moved to virtual. So significant cost savings in terms of travel and that type of thing. And the person I wanted, that I voted for, got their position, so I was really thankful for that. The table officer that was elected is he has a vast amount of experience. He sat on their rural committee for a long time and chaired that, I think, vice chaired. He's from a rural, quote unquote, Quebec municipality, which it's not rural like here, it's not agriculturally based. But he actually was very knowledgeable. We had question and answer rooms where we could go in and ask questions. And while I was in there, several actually Albertan councillors were in asking him questions. Ryan De Jong from Newell was asking him. I'm trying to think who else I saw. Oh, Carolyn Kalababa's sister, who looks exactly like her. I thought her name was wrong on her Zoom kind of picture. They had a long conversation. He very much understands Alberta and our challenges and some of the issues that we have. So I was encouraged by that. He was also, just very knowledgeable, very passionate. Calgary Metropolitan Region Board, not a lot to update. At the last board meeting, we had not heard back about the extension request. We sent a letter requesting an extension until April for the growth plan. We haven't heard back on that.
Can I ask a question on that? I listened in on that meeting.
Yes, of course.
And there was a discussion about their CMRB board meeting with Minister Allard, and there was a request from one of the members saying that they wanted to basically have a meeting beforehand to make sure everybody was in agreement what they were going to talk about. And everybody has different views, but it's almost like want to put on a good front, and I just didn't find that.
And you
right.
heard my response.
Yeah,
so,
for sure. But I wanted to point that out, that
yeah.
they wanted to have a united front of support. And pretty amazing, actually, to hear somebody actually want that. But.
Yeah, and so I was very clear. I did respond. I was very clear that I didn't think it was appropriate to expect that there would be necessarily consensus, or we would not be homogeneous necessarily in how we would present if we had an opportunity to meet with the minister, and that I can't remember exactly how I worded it, but more or less that I could not agree to that. So it's one thing to have like a planned agenda and to know what discussion topics you need to have. I think that's important, and I think it's important to be prepared when you're meeting with the minister or her department. But to ask for there to be consensus amongst all of us is just not realistic.
So, question on the CMRB, and they're trying to push the date down road till April 1st?
April 1st or end of April? April 1st.
Is there consensus? I don't know, because I'm on land use, I'm not on servicing. Is there going to be an answer to the to the water situation by that point? Like, who controls the water? Like, how does, is there going to be any, like, so what's the point of even, we all know that if you don't control water, whoever controls water controls the growth. That's, so, yes, this is
From my understanding, and Scott can probably speak to it better, at this point, it doesn't look like there is necessarily going to be what I would consider a fulsome servicing plan that's going to be completed with the growth plan that would address all of
It has been
the,
brought up many times by neighboring municipalities that don't have water, that's the most important issue. And it-
right. So
and-
what's the point of having a growth management plan that's all signed off, everybody signs off on, when the most important thing on that growth management plan is it's a big elephant in the room. We don't talk about them. We smell them. We can hear them, but we don't talk about them. Like, that's ludicrous. That's all I have to say.
totally fair comment. And I think we just have to keep raising that at the board and committee level.
I don't think the votes are there to support that.
I'll be on the board then.
Agree with you.
Okay.
I'm sure it's the same issues that were with the first Calgary Metropolitan Board, the same issues.
Partnership.
Regional partnership, yeah.
But that was volunteer.
Sure.
This is mandated, and they cannot, even in a mandated board, we do not have the political will to answer that question. Because if they answer the question, yes or no, somebody's going to be disappointed, right?
Yep. No, and I also think that we need to really impress that upon the minister, is that really key element that's going to be missing from the plan. And that at this point, it doesn't appear that we're addressing it. I think we need to, and I think administration could help us draft some documentation just outlining kind of the gravity of the importance of that in the Calgary region. And we need to take that when we have an opportunity to meet with the minister, regardless of how or where or whatever, and ensure that she understands that. So, excellent point. Municipal Affairs representative was at the meeting and gave some updates, mainly around COVID and that type of thing. There was a request to endorse a letter of support regarding EMS dispatch, and after consulting with Councillor Kester, who chairs our Wademza board and has vast experience with our dispatch system as well as with our fire services staff, I did not vote in favor of the letter, just so council's all aware. It was approved and the majority of the board did support the letter, so it did go to Minister Shandro. I was also asked to participate in the Siksika Nation Interagency Wildfire Tabletop Exercise. Initially, I wasn't sure that I would be useful, in all honesty, because initially I understood it to be more operationally focused. So I reached out to the planners and kind of asked, like, is it appropriate that, is there a governance element to this where I should be participating? And they said, absolutely. There are key kind of governance aspects to it in terms of communication and agreements and things like that. And so Siksika Nation Councillor Samuel Crowfoot was also participating in the tabletop exercise, so he and I could both kind of have that governance piece. It was a very well-run exercise with several municipalities, representative, multiple RCMP detachments. Siksika did a phenomenal job of, it was actually my first tabletop exercise. I had never done anything like that before. They did it really well. There's a fulsome report that came out from learnings and findings and that type of thing. So I know our fire chief, he participated at Siksika, so he was there coordinating kind of how they would respond and the implications of when the fire moved and things like that. And it was phenomenal, just even seeing the connections made between different departments and staff, particularly with our staff being a little bit newer, and having that chance to kind of collaborate, I think, was really good. And our staff did a phenomenal job at that. There are some actionable items there that I mentioned that our administration are working on.
I just hope when you're talking about that mutual aid agreement, I hope you can get something signed. We tried that about 10 years ago and they couldn't sign it.
Yeah, and that's actually, I believe their staff brought that to Councillor Crowfoot's attention during the exercise, that I think it was their legal that maybe held it up, something to that.
It was, yeah, it was something in the way their system is set up that through the federal government, they didn't have the right to sign it. It had to go back to the federal side to get it, and we left it in their ballpark, and they never did get it done.
They seem very committed to working on it. There may still be, I'm not knowledgeable enough about how kind of between the federal and municipal and how that would kind of mesh, but they're very committed to working on that. Our staff are very committed to working on it with them, and are prioritizing that because we do not have a mutual aid agreement with Siksika, and so they're working on that. And then Councillor Crowfoot during that exercise also indicated that there could be an element of emergency management that maybe we could consider for the memorandum of understanding. So it's just something, if it can't be done, I'm not knowledgeable enough about that stuff, but if it can, I think it would be good to get an agreement in place because we're so close, and with what we saw just shortly after the election.
I think it can be done, it's just that they have to take it.
Right.
They can't sign it, then they have to, at that time, it could have been done if they'd have gone after the federal.
Get it ratified the way they need.
They never followed up on it, so.
Yeah, no, this council is, I cannot speak highly enough about Chief Crowfoot and his council, the diverse experience and expertise, the high level of governance that's occurring, and the commitment to do the absolute best that they can for Siksika Nation, and it's phenomenal, and I'm grateful that we have just been able to develop a relationship with some of the councillors, and that our staff are coordinating. I mean, we saw right after the election with that fire, we need to be able to collaborate and work together and back each other up. So,
and something like Councillor Armstrong was talking about there about signing, kind of goes with what that joint meeting was. They said if there's something that we can back it from two different sides. So if you know, we have to go talk to Martin Shields to get it done, and he's got to go, like something like that. If it's a simple thing and we can push on our side and push on their side, it'll help. So
yeah,
that's kind of what we were talking about. You know, they have access to different people than we do usually.
yeah, absolutely.
All you can do is try.
The only other thing I'll touch on, we did hold our Community Futures Symposium. It's typically in person. It was done all virtually. It was actually highly efficient. The training was actually probably more efficient than we would have done in person, but of course you're missing that like elements that you would have if you were in person. It was really thorough training, which I took back to that board, which was good. And with that, I will move that my report be accepted as presented, and I'm happy to answer any more questions.
I just have a comment.
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned the letter of support for dispatch in Calgary,
Yes.
and you mentioned my name, that I was opposed to it, so to say. I don't know if council's aware, but we're dispatched by AHS South Calgary, and our ambulances leave the county, leave Strathmore, and we do quite a bit of work within the City of Calgary's limits for dispatch. The City of Calgary ambulances are dispatched by Calgary, and they will not and do not leave the City of Calgary. Our resources are deployed within the city, and theirs do not come out and help anybody else. And if it was centralized dispatch by AHS, I believe those ambulances would be treated just like our ambulances. It would make for a more efficient type system. That was why I opposed signing the letter, because right now we're helping out, so to say, and we're not receiving the favor back. That was the basis of, I had some other petty issues, but that was the major issue.
I don't know if it would help, Glenn, because the same thing's happening down where we used to have the Badlands ambulance, and the same issue's happening there. Those ambulances are spending more time in the city than they are out. Ones in the city aren't coming out and helping out in their area.
Exactly, Ben. And I don't know, the city had a union contract with their paramedics, and they're not getting off shift on time. So the last half hour of their shift, those ambulances are not dispatched. And our ambulance can be dispatched in the city to do a call, and conceivably it could be right beside an ambulance sitting there in the last half hour waiting for shift change. That's how uneven or one-sided it's gotten.
Yeah, and for me, I certainly took Councillor Custer's comments into consideration, and it was just based on the most up-to-date information. What was shared with me through our fire staff was that localized dispatch, like what we see in the 4 cities that are kind of lobbying for continued funding, is not necessarily the most effective way to dispatch sort of I'm trying to think, like the more of a provincial model of EMS delivery. So the model has changed. So even though, like, I'll just be honest, when I first heard, because Foothills was actually very supportive of the letter because they are lobbying and advocating to get their local dispatch back, and that made me think maybe we should be advocating to get our dispatch back. And so that's when I called Glenn and said, what are your thoughts? And he dug into it a little bit, and our staff dug into it a little bit, and it turns out that many of the issues that we were initially hearing about are improving, or there is some accountability with the provincial dispatch, but not necessarily with one of the localized dispatch centers that we deal with that dispatches the north side of our county. And that would be rectified if it went to a centralized dispatch. So I found out it was much more complicated than I initially understood. I learned a lot about it. And I also, obviously, because of potential perceived bias, tried to really rely on both our staff and Councillor Kester's expertise on the Widemsa board to form my position. So I did indicate that forward focus could be on optimizing the efficiency of coordinating the dispatch of fire and medical first response, because that is one challenge that still exists because we don't have local dispatch. So there are still challenges. There are still things that we can focus on to advocate for and to improve. The other thing to note that our administration pointed out is there have been technology advances with mapping and rural familiarization, things like that. So, yeah. And my bottom line is I really think that the model has to be based on analytics, like on matrices and that type of thing, metrics. So yeah, Councillor Kester, that was really good information, and thank you for sharing that with us. I did want to know, like, my position was very much based on like what I thought was a strong rationale for what the province was considering, was what I could gather. So,
And I'll mention, because I listened to the meeting, there wasn't a lot of time that Calgary was asking for. It was pretty much, we need to get this done now. That's what I disagreed with.
yes.
I wish I could have called in and said something, because I was listening to it, because I don't feel the chair of CMRB should have let it go like that. Should have been able to, especially some of this magnitude where you need to do your research, to not say we need to get a letter signed right away. Calgary has been working on this for a long time. I've heard the issues on the radio. They've been dealing with it for months. They could have brought this forward a long time ago and had some discussion, but it was basically, and it kind of goes against the whole point of the CMRB board that bothers me the most is the big guy in the room says do this and or says jump and everybody goes how high, and that's the part that I didn't like.
And I did express concern with the timing. I said that I was not prepared to vote on the question because I hadn't had time to do research. I was not prepared to take a position. But they, on the other hand, they did present a fairly strong rationale for it being an emergent item because, just so that everybody is aware of everything, Calgary indicated that they had believed that they had a longer consultation period with the province, and then they had gotten new information where it was sort of indicated this was going to be a fairly quick decision. So they were trying to, I think, move quickly and get regional support for it, so.
But I also remember when Glenn brought it forward to the board back when I first went about our issues, and it was discussed, and it wasn't a huge rush, but it was nice to get some support. And I don't remember how much was gone of there, but it sounded very familiar. So when we had an issue, it wasn't. There was support there, but not like this, where it's a big push. So.
Yeah, fair comments. So it went through, the letter went. But just so that you understand, like, why I took the position that I did was more what I wanted council to know. I believe I put a motion on the floor. Any other questions or comments? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Let me just, I'll real quickly just do the Marigold. I just included some Marigold background information. They're making really good progress. We had the groundbreaking with WID and Marigold at the headquarters. There's some information there. It's more just for background, and I'll just move to accept it as information. Any questions? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We will take a break. We'll reconvene at 10:15. Councillor Kester, are you there?
I'm here.
Perfect. We're going to call the meeting back to order. We'll move to 3.2. You bet.
My report is in the package. I do have one spelling mistake. It's not MLS, Multiple Listing Service. MLA is at the county's office. Butler, I met with Minister Allard, and I thought that was really good. WRC, the bulk water station change order, I believe it was left where it was going to come back to us if the engineers had booked a time with us, and I haven't heard anything back yet. Anything else? It's in my report. Any questions, please ask. If not, I'll move my report as presented.
So I guess just, I don't know how I missed that in my report, just a quick update on the assessment model review. At that meeting, Minister Allard had indicated that she was taking into account all of the feedback that she was receiving from all of the rural municipalities as well as some urban municipalities, that if I understand correctly, scenario D is no longer being considered. They are considering alternatives other than A, B, and C. That they still do need to do something. I believe the assessment model is 15 years old and hasn't been changed. Some key notes there were just, and I think one of the things that we really need to remember in our advocacy is that assessment should not be politicized. Like, that is not the place. And just, she really did seem, though, to understand that we need to balance viability and sustainability of rural municipalities, and not just the rural municipalities that are impacted by the assessment model changes, but when we look at who could be impacted by our changes, things like our CRISP and CURB funding are based on our linear assessment. So if that assessment changes, that outflow, some cost sharing agreements are based on things like that. Obviously, if our revenue is impacted significantly, some of those, the ability to continue with some of those cost sharing agreements and things all across the province could be altered. So she did seem to understand that. She's very clearly very in tune with the private sector and wants us to be competitive. So do I. Like, we need our energy sector to thrive. So she fully understood that. Many of the same meetings that all of us made with our MLAs were also made there to Minister Allard. And the big thing that we also stressed was just that leverage for collectability, which we also sent that letter regarding that as well. So it was actually a really good meeting. One of the other key things she indicated was she really wanted like a relational reset with municipalities. So she knew that there had been some challenges. I had the utmost respect for the previous Minister of Municipal Affairs, but she knew there were some challenges there. She was addressing them head on and just wants to reset things, wants to listen. She did indicate that a temporary assessment model may come out. And we heard on Friday at the district meeting that will likely be mid-October. Her goal had been October 1st, and she has pushed that out to mid-October. So we should know in the next couple of weeks what the impacts will be for kind of the budgeting that we need to do here right away. So,
Keeping in mind that income tax was temporary.
yeah, I know. That point I think was actually made explicitly. So absolutely. So, sorry to jump in.
No, that's okay.
I did
Yeah.
mean to speak a bit more to that. So. Did you put a motion on? You made a motion. Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved to approve his report. Any other questions or comments? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to Division 4, councillor report.
The report.
Oh, sorry. Division 3.
Well, I didn't have one in.
I think that's why I
Apologies.
missed it, because I
Yeah.
was looking on here. I'm so sorry.
Apologies, the first one I've ever missed, but I happened to be away, so there wasn't very much on it anyway. I did want to, I sent a picture to Matthew about the Speargrass Park playground, and have gone myself with my grandchild, and it's very well received. Every time we've been there, there's always been some other people there. The path is amazing to get there, and yeah, it's a really good job. It's looking really, really good. Good community spirit on putting it together. There was lots and loads of people, actually, for the 2 days. Now I know how they're put together. Yeah, and then with Canadian Badlands, we are probably 2 days away from hiring our consultant to re-strategize, revision, and I know that these are hard times for municipalities, so it's kind of getting to be a hard sell. If we wouldn't have done anything, it would have been detrimental to the Badlands. But as a large region, if we want to become iconic as the Canadian Rockies, it's important that we all stick together for advocacy, for marketing, for a lot of reasons. So, and this year, actually, the east of Calgary has been busier than it ever has been. Of course, people are traveling inside the province. And I think it's important that we launch this quickly on our new strategies. And traveling outside of the province, I can understand why people are staying home a little bit more. It's, of course, they have different rules. You gotta, know them all. You get spoken harshly sometimes when you're going into public areas. And out of province also, you're not really welcome. So it's good that people are staying home. So with Canadian Bands, there'll be more of a report next week, or next month. Thank you.
Motion to accept your...
Motion to accept.
Any questions? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Now we'll move to 3.5, Division 4. Sorry, Donna.
Not a problem. Everything has been covered previously. I thought I could just sort of go through this. But on September 16th, we had a ASB bursary meeting, and we had 3 really good applicants. And don't quote me on the numbers, but I believe we have granted $1,500 per applicant for continuing on their ag-based schooling. So one of the really good things we do in the bursary thing is I'm not sure how we've pushed forward to get it out there to other, so that the schools know that this is out there, so the students know there's another funding, there's some more access to funding. So because I believe in an area this big that we granted all 3 applicants. But, I would assume that the way the monetary situation is, that we should be getting more applications preceding years, so.
Bring
yeah.
that up tomorrow, because that's a good idea. Like, it might even be good for the ASB chair. I can give him a job because he's not here. Like, to even go talk at a school or something and, like, just raise awareness of it or something. Because you're right, I would expect more applications.
We'll make that,
It's a really good point, like, just raising the visibility of it, I think.
right, because it's, yeah, I mean, it's a substantial amount of money. Like, we have, I believe, a pool of $5,000 a year to divvy out, so, that's a fairly substantial amount of money, so. Anyway, so other than that, I think everything else that I've done has been very well covered, so I will make a motion for my report to be accepted.
Any questions for Councillor Eichert? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.6, Division 6 Councillor Report.
Yeah, it's on the website there. Package. Got a couple of additions. Wheatland Housing, we're entering into an expression of interest for, we were invited by the province for one of the 30 municipalities that are priority in expanding our capacity for care, SL4, SL4D, long-term care, hospice was even included. So that expression of interest is a lengthy book, and it's due on the 8th. So I know staff are working diligently today to put the finishing touches on it. It has to be submitted tomorrow. So that's been kind of taken precedence. If we get this expression of interest and we get to enter into a contract with AHS, this expression is no capital from the province. But it opens up the door for Wheatland Housing because of the increased monetary gain from having a contract with Alberta Health. Makes building the new lodge, the financing part, extremely easier. There's people waiting to finance if we get the contract because it's guaranteed income. Yeah, so that's very important. On our architect, we're started community engagement. That's be on Thursday the 8th at 7 o'clock. It's through barryarchitecture.ca. There'd be a website there. And I'm encouraging all of council to, it's an hour. It's community engagement to be 5 of these sessions. And you can go on the web, participate in listen to it, provide comments. You have till Monday morning to provide comments on what you heard on the lodge in general. And then the results are tabulated and a new program's put together for the following Thursday. And we'll do that 5 times. There is on the website a timeline on what the different topics are for the five things. So yeah, and then yesterday I participated in Facebook Live to try and advertise and get people so they know about the Thursday evenings. So yeah, spread it around. I know the counties put it on their website. I believe all the municipalities have to spread the word, so to say. Yeah, so if there's any questions, if not, I'll move my report.
Any questions? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.7, Division 7, Councillor report.
Thank you. It's it's on your website, computer, whatever you call it. And if there's any questions, I'll answer them. Otherwise, I'll move it for acceptance.
In answer to your question, yes, repeatedly. In answer to your question at the bottom, yes, repeatedly.
Yeah.
Maybe daily, I don't know.
Then
Any questions for Division 7? Councillor Armstrong. Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.1.1, Chief Administrative Officer report. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Council. Brian from Administration. So my report is on page 79 of the agenda package. Just some things to note. This last month, I completed some compost engagement for the Code of Practice for compost facilities. That was something that the deadline was extended to September 30th. We did engage residents around Range Road 250 just to ensure that they had their input in as well. With that site as well, we are going to be removing the surveillance camera that's on that site. So we have contacted the landowner and the company, so that should be removed at some point this week. Last Friday, we hosted the CRMA, so the Central Zone, and that had to be held in Strathmore due to connectivity issues. The one thing I'd like to mention is about the staff at the county that did an amazing job with organizing, hosting, and executing that event. It definitely is an uncertain year. There was definitely limitations. Seems like things were changing on and off. We did end up going with a hybrid model, so staff can't speak highly enough about the event. It just kind of shows the pride of work the staff put into planning and executing any type of work, and that goes for all staff. Other things, kind of working on the strategic plan for 2020 to 2022 is going to be coming forward to council in about a week. Under People Services, we are hiring the asset management position. So that's a new position that was approved this year. It's going to be one that it's got a lot of work for them, but it's going to be beneficial for the county in the long term. Our AR clerk, that's another one that is closed, and I believe they are just about to start the interview process. So that was due to a pending retirement. And we have also just implemented some COVID screening forms for employees. It takes about a minute for staff to fill these out, so that should be implemented at some point this month. On page 80 of the agenda package, from 80 to 82, is a council resolution tracker. Also, just to note, I did publish an error by accident, page 83 to 86. Those are just previous actions that were completed. Just things that were mentioned that were green that you kind of never see them again, but yeah, they are. I accidentally published the workbook instead of the work page on Excel. So besides that, if there's any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I would definitely echo your comments on the excellent job that the administrative staff did on the event on Friday. It went off really, I can't say how seamlessly it went off. They did honestly a phenomenal job, from registering people right through to the end. Technology was impeccable. It went really, really well. And as well, I'll share it again in my report, but I just wanted to mention that our ASB resolution regarding the Ag Farmland Trust was approved unanimously. And just huge gratitude for our environmental coordinator. Alyssa does a phenomenal job on those resolutions, and her team, and to administration, whoever contributed to that. It was absolutely phenomenal, very well received. And I had a couple of questions from people and several comments that people had been thinking something like this should have come many, many times, and they were really glad we put it forward. There may be some feedback for us to consider as we take it to RMA. So people were really, really pleased with the resolution, and I'm extremely grateful. So any questions for CAO Henderson?
Not a question, just a comment. I as well, thanks for reminding me, Brian, the Code of Practice, the engagement, I participated in that too, and I followed up with some residents and made sure that they had done it as well. So hopefully they have enough information, and I do know there's a draft coming first round of the changes, I think in about a month or so. So we'll see if they actually listen. Where it goes from there.
Excellent. Any other questions? It was also actually impressive to just see all the things that have been completed, so it was a good mistake, actually. Motion to accept CAO Henderson's report as information.
Also move.
Councillor Bigger has moved. Any questions? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.2.1, Corporate and Financial Services Report.
Good morning, Reeve Lincoln Council. My name is Tracy Buto, GM of Corporate and Financial Services. The first item I'd like to present is the October report. A few highlights include that general assessment inspections and annual property assessment inspections are currently being conducted. We have e-billing was released in August, and this provides residents with the option to receive their bills by email. eSend will allow cost savings on processing letter mail and postage. Currently, we have 81 utility customers that are signed up for this service. Fire hall onboarding has been completed except for Wheatland West. The fire halls are now connected through our network and benefiting from interconnectivity and growing corporate security initiatives. We also have almost completed our secure storage cleanup project. The storage room, when I first saw it, I don't believe we had space for one box. It is now empty. And also our 2020 annual disposition sign-off will be going to the CAO for final sign-off. I believe that has been done. Are there any questions?
If no questions, a motion to accept the report as information.
Also move.
Councillor Eichert has moved. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.22, Madsen Charity Guidelines Policy.
The next item is a recommendation to rescind Policy 2.4, which is the Madsen Charity Guideline. The county has administered this since 1978. The estate of Hans Peter Madsen provided funds for the county to support special needs children and also administer a scholarship through Standard School, which is now called Wheatland Crossing. In researching not-for-profits that aligned with the will of Mr. Madsen, staff came across Project Hope. Further, WFCSS indicated that Hope Bridges would also be an appropriate not-for-profit that also aligned with Mr. Madsen's will. During the research, we also were informed that Hope Bridges, through the Community Enhancement Program, also receives about $5,000 per year for the last few years. And we are recommending that the county close the accounts and write a check for Project Hope and Hope Bridges. Further, a check be sent to Golden Hills School Division to administer funds for scholarships. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Just one question. I don't actually expect you to be able to answer it, though. I read in the report that Project Hope is available for all children in County of Wheatland. I believe, and it may have changed, I did see in their report that it's available to students in Wheatland County if transportation can be approved. I know historically that was just for within Golden Hills School Division. So there would be students that would attend the separate school or who are home educated that are not able to access that program. I still completely support this, just a point of clarification.
Okay.
And it may have changed. They may now be serving students from other school divisions or home education. So
I did get this information from the
saw
website.
That, yeah. No, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I think it's really good to put this into the hands of organizations that can govern it and use it in the most efficient way. And it really, I think, meets the intentions of what was outlined. So I support this for sure. Any other questions or comments?
Just one question with your comments, does this, if we move it, do what they're saying here, does that allow all children within the municipality to access that? Or deals with the separate schools and the other, do they also get a chance to access that?
I believe Hope Bridges, so the program that for young adults and adults of all ages that they transition to, that's, I believe, open to anyone in the community. So that would serve everybody for sure.
Because knowing where Hans was coming from for this, that would be part of what he would.
Yeah, and they serve a diverse group of people, not just people with different abilities or disabilities, a really diverse group of people. It's just Project Hope, and Project Hope may have changed their policies as well from when the information I have. So I meant to look into it and I just didn't get to it, so I apologize.
We need to have that clarified before we do this, to make sure.
I think because the Hope Bridges is open to everybody.
Yeah.
And Hope Bridges is 70%.
Yeah, and he did also, I think the scholarship had been being administered already through there, like it's a historic, there's some precedence for it going that way as well.
I'll recommend that we follow staff's recommendation.
So you're moving to rescind that policy and transfer those funds? Perfect. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.23, CVIP fees.
At the August 18th meeting of council, staff were asked to research commercial vehicle inspection rates within the county. Administration is recommending increasing the current rate of $94 to $300 to align with what is currently being charged in today's market. Are there any questions?
I think this certainly demonstrates what we were discussing just about the realities of the contributions.
Yeah, that was my point, is to make sure it reflects current costs. Pretty close.
Yeah, and I think it was presented in a way, it's very clear that this is no change in the contribution, like nothing is changing, it's just recognizing the value of it.
Work, yeah, for
That
sure.
making sure that's accurate. We do need a motion to amend the fee schedule. Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.24, award contract for broadband project manager.
On July 21st, staff posted an RFP for a project manager to develop a county broadband strategy. Several staff reviewed the RFPs that were submitted, filled in a matrix, and conducted first and second interviews. Staff asked questions about each company's methodology and experience in project management. Staff is recommending that council award the contract for project manager of the rural broadband project to Tricon Solutions. Tricon's proposal included several resources, such as a business analyst, project coordinator, and change manager. Staff believe that these resources will be a great benefit to the project. If I could provide an overview of the project. I know that council is aware, but I just would like to make sure that everyone is aware listening to the recording. So basically, we have broke this down into a 6-month project to begin with. And the first 6 months will be the project manager will come in and speak to our IT manager, CAO, staff, and kind of define the project. And then there will be planning and requirements such as current inventory, what do we have, such as towers, anything that we can use in the design. And then an RFX will be created. So we will not have a solution. What it is the project manager will gather all the information required and will basically say and speak to stakeholders through surveys, open houses, whatever we kind of determine is most appropriate. And then basically we will put out the RFP, and there will be companies that submit their proposals on how best to have broadband in the county. So that could be wireless, it could be infrastructure under the ground. At this point, we don't really know. So I did want to make sure that that was clear, but basically at the end, we'd have a broadband strategy that we can post for the public so they're aware of kind of priorities and needs and timelines and things like that. What's really important, I think, with this as well is that it's in phases. So maybe the first phase is that we select a vendor. And the second phase is that we have a design, a roadmap, and what are our priorities. And then that third stage is a phased implementation. So one thing I do want to be to notify council is I believe we had $1 million in the budget for 2021, and we have increased that to about $4 million. And just in my experience, what happens is as you learn more about a project, you gain more information in talking to other companies and people that are specialists, and you start to refine those costs. So I did want to make you aware that you will see that in the budget in 2021. And I believe that it was possibly $1 million because we were in a partnership, and so we were sharing those costs. But we did exit the partnership. I believe, my understanding is that we weren't progressing and chose to go on our own. So I did want to make sure that there was an understanding with our residents and other staff that this project manager won't provide the solution, but will compile all the information, put out an RFP, and then it will be the companies that submit that will provide the solution, and then thereby we'll have a better idea of cost too.
And I think that's brilliant. I think it's key for us to gather and know what are our needs, what do we have, like what is necessary. And just a comment to the consideration to increase in the budget, I think the potential scope has changed because what we were considering with the partnership was solely a backbone sort of from west to east of the county and nothing beyond that. So depending on what solutions are brought forward, it could just be something like that, like to start with, or we might be able to do some return on investment like investigation. It might be worth to put in more initial, like we'll rely on obviously our administrative team and the consultants' work, and then council can consider what's best. I know I am relatively frequently hearing from people that particularly right now it is an issue, but I do ask people like, what do you foresee kind of when we have less public health measures in place or that type of thing, less virtual work, more return to normal? And people seem to think that there still will be more people working at home, still a higher reliance on technology for education. I don't think we're going to see virtual health platforms disappear, things like that. And they are actually very efficient. Like I have found huge efficiencies when I can text a photo to a doctor and do an online virtual consult versus 3-hour round trip for an appointment. There's lots of educational opportunities, training, things like that, that I think, as well as the investment attraction element to it. So I think the plan that administration has done and getting somebody who has the capacity to focus on this is really important. So I support this for sure.
As long as it's...
A question.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Are we going to explore some synergies with municipalities within our borders or are very close to us? Because higher density populations, all that kind of stuff. And maybe there's an opportunity to partner up. If there's any grants, usually they like to give grants in collaboration a lot easier than just individual. I'm just curious if part of their mandate is to explore opportunities with adjacents.
I'm going to pass that question along to Corey, our IT manager, to answer.
Thanks for your question, Councillor Kester. Through the Reeve, we definitely want to investigate all avenues, and that will be one of the responsibilities of this project manager. They're fundamentally putting the Wheatland County face on for us, and they'll be representing us in all potential transactions that might occur. For instance, partnerships, grant funding opportunities. And as well as writing up the RFP. So they're going to be representing us in this particular contract, and so that's one of the reasons why we chose a particular vendor, and we felt that they would best represent us, as well as to Tracy's point, that they have many different resources that they can draw on within their organization that we felt would benefit certain aspects of the particular project.
Yeah, and the intermunicipal engagement will be, I think, a key piece of that. One municipality had reached out when we were still in the partnership and had been sort of potentially considering if there was a role for them in the partnership, and then following our exit from that has reached out a few times, just seeing where the county's at. And that type of thing. I've been leaving things because I wanted to get this in place. I wanted this to be a very objective, very follow our procurement policies, that type of thing, not compromise that at all. So we haven't been really exploring that to the extent that we can now that we will have this in place. So I think that, Councillor Kester, that's a key thing, is to be talking to our neighbors and seeing how we can work together, because there's definitely economies of scale and things like that to be exploring. So great question.
For me, I think of this as like another utility, and this is like the backbone for somebody to come in and take over maybe. And I just don't want us to lose an investment that we may put in as a municipality into something for company XYZ to make money off it and profit. So whatever is put in, I expect that those costs would be recovered by whoever runs it in the future, and run it that way, because to me it's just another utility. So.
If I can respond to that through the Reeve, we definitely want to. So part of this whole process will be gathering requirements. That'll be from administration, from council. What is it that we really want to get out of that, and we can include those type of things in our requirements.
Any other questions or comments on the consultant or the project?
And I've sort of echo the sentiments of Councillor Clausen. This has to be, in my mind, a tool to attract business into the area. The fact that some kid can play Fortnite better doesn't affect me at all. I don't want to be spending a dime on that. But if we have to keep in mind that this is part of an attraction thing. Like, if you can show me that this is going to attract business, will bring in revenue for assessments and all that kind of stuff, the sky's the limit. But if we're spending millions of dollars just so that people that don't have good internet service right now, you have to justify. Like, I will expect a real cost analysis justification so that for spending any of this money. I believe it 100%. It is essential, but I think we have to make sure that we're not doing this sort of a typical social program that everybody gets it. This has to be targeted. This has to be for business. Why are we doing this? We're trying to bring in assessments so that we can use that money to maybe spread the system out and to make it more cost effective for individual users. My opinion.
And that's been some of council's previous discussion as well. Like, we have to keep in mind our proximity to Calgary, like to the exchange there, and where our industrial where one of our prime industrial areas, actually both of them are pretty proximal, or a couple of them are proximal.
And so just, it will benefit us through residential too, through real estate, because I asked quite a few actually realtors. The first question they ask is how much the taxes. The second one is what's your broadband like? And more people are moving out here than ever. They are leaving the city. Speargrass doesn't even have a place. I don't even think they have a place for sale now, and there's 2 more builds. So, and one of the things is that they're coming here and they're working from home. So they need, that's an important thing to have for our county.
And for our egg producers as well, I think we have to keep that in mind. It's going to be challenging because of our density and just our area. It's going to be very challenging, particularly to serve our egg producers. But I heard MP Shields, I was on a call with him last week, and he is impressing upon the government that it's not just people say the broadband, the last mile to the last community, and he is arguing it needs to be to our last farm gate. That's a direct quote from MP Shields. We need to think about our egg producers. It is increasingly relying on technology and connectivity, so.
And I've heard similar things that Councillor Biggers talked about with talking to some realtors in the area. Yeah, there's lots of people that are leaving the city right now, coming out to rural because they can work remotely and they need that connectivity. And we're seeing it in our divisions because we have that, but further east, you may not have that, right?
True, that's true.
Yeah, it's good to be aware of that for sure. Any other questions on the contract or the project? We do need a motion to award the contract.
Also move.
Councillor Bigger has moved. Any further discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move to 4.3, Community and Development Services Report.
Good morning, Council. Matt from Administration. The Community and Development Services Report is found on page 106 of your agenda package. It's been a busy couple of months, actually, for the department. Of note, the Hussar School land transfer. I did brief Council about this several months ago and just providing you an update in conjunction with Transportation and Agriculture. We've been working with the school division and the village through the land transfer process. It's ongoing, doesn't require much effort, as mentioned to Council prior. However, the next step is the land annexation process, which is regulated by the MGA and is relatively lengthy in nature. So Hussar will be coming forward with a formal request and a statement of support for the annexation from its council. We'll then receive it and proceed with that process. Just wanted to provide you an update in that matter. With regards to community services, you'll see on the bottom of page 106, 2 images, left Clooney Playground and right Speargrass. After a long time in terms of working with the communities. Those are finally up. We'll be arranging some photo opportunities in the future with regards to both, but it is quite exciting. In terms of the Master Parks Plan, just a brief update, we're looking at getting some continuation dates at the end of October to continue that process. Council did get involved in that in terms of that engagement process at a previous meeting, so we're going to continue that as we move along. With regards to economic development, we did continue and kick off the Infinite Possibilities calls. So that was started up again on the 24th. We had a ton of participation 2 weeks ago. There was one last week, and we're going to continue moving along as such. We're working to utilize the WC website and working with the Lakes and Muirfields for those vacant lots. So we're getting some traction in terms of some visibility with the lots and for the lots for sale. We have our reserve fund set up nicely, so that's coming along quite nicely. That is a good success factor in terms of that lengthy transaction. In terms of fire and emergency services, we found some synergies in terms of some administrative support that's already existing in the county staff. so we're able to kind of provide some support without hiring another position. So that's quite exciting as well as they transition into community and development services. We've undertaken extensive training, as Reeve Link mentioned. We did engage with Siksika on one of those tabletop exercises, and we're going out into the community, like listening and hearing what's going on and what people expect, and working in conjunction with our fire master plan as well. So we're moving along nicely. We just recently reviewed some tenders that came in for our fire hall. So council will be reviewing that at next council meeting and making a decision on a successful proponent in terms of constructing that fire hall. So that's coming live quite shortly as well. In terms of the call volumes, we're trying to gather that data and make a more kind of cohesive data system in terms of, then we will be able to present to you monthly those call volumes, and you'll be able to see the differences and fluctuations in that. So we're working on that. That's a priority as well. You'll see the on page 108, the planning actuals in terms of the completed reports and the years to date for planning and safety code applications and development permits as well. Not too much fluctuation as well. We're a little down, but nothing of concern with regards to development permits. It's been a different year, but it's important to track that on an ongoing basis. Otherwise, that's it for my report. Thank you.
Excellent. Any questions? If not, a motion to accept the report as information.
So moved.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved. Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.3.2, SD 2016-17 subdivision time extension.
SD 2016-17, found on page 114 of council's package.
I think it's Megan. You're really quiet. Is it Megan?
Oh, yes.
There you are. Perfect.
Sorry, guys. Can you hear me now?
You bet. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Did you want me to restart?
Please.
So just presenting the second subdivision extension request for subdivision SD 2016-17. That's the Rosewood River Ridge. The report starts on page 114 of council's package. This subdivision was given conditional approval on May 8th, 2018 and contains 33 conditions and sub-conditions. This subdivision is located within the hamlet of Rosebud and extends Jackson Ave. This subdivision was one of the subdivisions to receive a blanket extension from council this past spring, and council did grant a minor extension on September 15th in order to give the applicants more time to obtain all the landowner signatures for the subdivision extension application. So most of the conditions are deemed incomplete. Significant progress has been made towards completion. Several reports and plans are in the final stages of review, and the payments and caveat registrations are the final step of endorsement. There are several conditions tied to waste management as well, which may become superfluous if the sewage lagoon in Rosebud construction is completed prior to the subdivision being endorsed. So staff is recommending that council approve an extension request to October 6, 2021. That does conclude my presentation, and I am available if you have any questions.
Any questions regarding the extension?
I'll make a motion that council approves subdivision time extension till October 7th, 2021 for Rosebud River Ridge.
Councillor Custer has moved the extension. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.33, Development Permit 2020-111.
Good morning. It's Suzanne Hayes, Development Officer with Wheatland County. This report starts on page 126 of your agenda package, and it is for a recreation facility, an outdoor rink within the Lakes of Muirfield. So if we could go to the location plan on page 130 of the agenda package. we will see. It is, I'll just talk about the parcel. It's 5.2 acres, and it currently holds the store and restaurant, the liquor store, restaurant, and a parking lot. Circulation on Appendix B of page 130 was done to the entire Lakes of Muirfield and some surrounding nearby parcels, and we did not receive any responses to the circulation. On page 131, you'll see the aerial photo and just some details. The Homeowners Association was working with the county on a request to find a suitable location to place the community outdoor rink. And the association previously had a snowbank rink on this same site, and then they secured a rink board system, so they need a larger area. So their responsibilities were to raise funds, and if approved, volunteers will be responsible for erecting and maintaining the rink boards, flooding the ice, clearing snow, and maintaining ice surfaces. And assistance was requested of the county to help find suitable land for site preparation to level the site and ensure drainage for the rink area, and for water supply from the hydrant and the cost of water. So Appendix C and D on page 131, just to look at that site plan. But during the site prep activities, some storm lines and manholes were discovered that were not on any maps and were unknown to the county. So a camera was sent down to ensure that they were connected to the rest of the system, and it was confirmed that they were. However, there is a manhole drain inside the rink area. So this means this location, we've temporarily capped this manhole, but this location will only be good for 1 to 2 years, and then a different location for a more long-term solution will need to be found. So policy evaluation, it does meet the requirements of the Muirfield ASP, the MDP, and the LUB. And staff are recommending on agenda page 126 approval of the recreation facility because it does align with the MDP section 3.10 for recreational development if it's within the context of the area, and it is the result of a collaborative effort with the community. Again, it is going to be a temporary solution. MPC has 3 options, our standard 3 options on page 128, and that concludes my presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions.
I have a question on we're supplying the water from the hydrant, because that hasn't been what we've actually done in the past.
So I have asked Dave to join me here in case there was some questions that I did not know the answer to. So I'm going to ask Dave, that was my understanding.
That was my understanding.
Dave, I'll just get you to come to the microphone. We have Councillor Kester joining us virtually. Thank you.
That was my understanding from the utility guys. I think that they can meter that as well, so there is an opportunity to recoup those costs. There's backflow prevention and a meter. I think that they have lined up for that hydrant, so there is, if council's desire is to charge for that, that could be part of in the agreement as well.
I think to be fair, we have to, and I know, talked to some people at the HOA there, and I made them aware that, in other municipalities, we've not paid for the water, but all they just wanted not to get charged the wastewater charge on that, which was substantial. So, yeah, I guess there's 2 thoughts here. We can keep track of it, and because we're doing the billing for everybody, we can include that, and everybody can pay for it that way. Or bill back the HOA, that's something, I don't know if it's even possible to do it the first way, but I think they should pay for it.
Or we should consider paying for the water
In Carson.
in Carson.
Like either
as
way,
well.
be consistent is what.
And what happens in Cheetah? Oh, right, of course. Sorry.
It's their playground. Then pay for it.
Just has to be consistent, whatever we're doing.
My question is, with the manhole, we didn't know it was there. Nobody knew it was there. If this hadn't happened, it would have went undiscovered for another 25 years. Why can't we just permanently close it instead of worrying about having to move this whole thing in 2 years?
Through the chair, you're right. We weren't aware of this manhole. It wasn't on the plans. We just hadn't. It was buried, I think, 2 or 3 feet down. So it's good in future, and especially for future development and flushing of this storm line, to have access to that. I mean, yeah, we can cap it. We can reroute the storm line somewhere else. It's just the cost to that as well.
I realize that. My concern is that if we let them put it there now, they're putting it up in 2 or 3 years, they find someone else, who's going to pay to move it? That'll be the question. They'll say, well, does it make more sense to, like, if they hadn't have found it and you had to go in there next year and flush something, you wouldn't have flushed it through there anyways, because you wouldn't have known it was there. You'd used another access to flush it.
Correct. Yeah.
All I'm saying is there was no record of it on anything, so it would have only been found by mistake or by...
Just to clarify, did you say it was on the plan?
Sorry, from what I understand, it was on the original plans. We just, so through the chair, we have started a stormwater flushing program this year, which hadn't been done ever, I don't think. So we're just getting into it right now. Likely this manhole would have been exposed in the years going forward and utilized for flushing. Like I say, there's alternatives. We can look at other ways, but knowing that we might, just to not secure that land and to allow for paving on top of it and all that kind of stuff. We just had that stipulation that if it's temporary, there won't be any cost to the county. If it's a permanent asphalt gravel structure we're putting on top of it, we will likely modify the system to move that manhole out of it.
Then I would say that the agreement that they're going to be signing, I think that needs to be made very clear to them that it is temporary and that they will be responsible for moving it, not the county.
I think we almost need to consider like another condition on the DP. What are your thoughts? You need to weigh in.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Or even council. So I was just speaking with Suzanne, Development Officer, about this and looking through the conditions, and indicated that the language will be in there to kind of cross off the concerns expressed, and we can certainly do that.
You just give an idea of a draft, like the development would be
A temporary skating rink, or specific to that use, but a temporary rink, and must be removed or what have you.
So we can word the condition that this development permit is temporary for a 2-year term or whatever it is, expiring on such and such a date, and removal or moving the rink to a new location at the sole cost of, how do you want me to say that? The sole cost of?
I would suggest the Homeowners Association, Lakes of Muirfield Homeowners Association, or something to that.
Or just say the county will not be responsible for the cost to move it.
Sure. Easier, yeah.
Okay.
Like an easement agreement almost, right? So.
Yeah, like it does say no permanent development shall occur on or over any utility right of way or easement. You could just after that say, like, this is temporary.
So to administration then, as long as it stays a dirt base, there'll be access to it every summer. So until they decide they want to make a more permanent position, that they want to put a pavement in so that they can use it as year-round, at that point in time, it'll have to be moved, and it'll be at their expense, right? So I don't know if we need to put, because I can see this lasting 3 or 4 or 5 years at the present location, because no one's got any money to do anything else, so.
Yeah, I like the idea of doing a 2-year and then they could reapply, right?
Yeah, because at the site when we looked at it, there was an exposed drain there that was full of material that was covered, and then I guess during research you guys have found another one underneath. So they were buried for a long time, so they're not really in use that much. So yeah, I don't want it to be taking our infrastructure out of service, but I still think it's a good spot for now.
Yeah. Did you put a motion on the floor?
Did I put a motion before?
What did we decide on the water?
And from when I was there talking to a group, that I said that you will have to pay for the water, and they seemed okay with it. It's just a way of tracking it, whether it's an estimation or a meter, whatever is most efficient. I don't know.
I don't think that would need to be a part of the development permit.
So if there's going to be an agreement for who's paying for what or whatever, we can just refer to the agreement. I'm trying to think of how to word it. Is responsibility of the water, charges for the water or the wastewater is as per the agreement, blah, 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 whatever.
They're just all cost requirements will be as per the agreement, and then you can make sure all of that is explicitly like that they're responsible for the maintenance and the erection of it and the water. And I think it's fair to not charge obviously for wastewater.
But I don't know what we did in Speargrass.
So, yeah, Speargrass bills, the wastewater is attached to the water meter,
It's a calculation.
the calculation. So they did pay for the wastewater.
And it's
So,
also bad there, but up in Muirfield,
Right.
you've got a huge difference in the amount, so we have to.
but it wouldn't be
fair.
hard to take that percentage rate back out of that bill. So,
The main contract, as simple as it can be, is at no cost to the county, and whatever they've come in
Or they apply for the water.
to pay for it is up to them, but just strictly no cost to the county.
Except for the in-kind preparation of the service if we have
That's
capacity.
already agreed on.
But I think we want them to know that we're still continuing, or that we're committed to that.
I believe the site.
Make it simple.
I don't think it's bad to have an agreement, just so it's explicit. Then if people change, we change, they change, whatever, it's in writing, and administration can work with their representatives, with the councillor of the area, and just make sure that it's done well.
Because they are working on a future recreation site within that. There will be an ask coming to us for some lands within there to do a multi-purpose thing is what, it's fairly broad vision there, but we'll see what they come up with. But they have a group of people that want to do a lot of work, so that's good.
So I just have a question to Donna. So the water, when they flood the rink at Carsland, a percentage of that they pay for wastewater at that same time? And the reason behind that is?
all bills. Like on my water bill, it's metered.
It's based on your water usage.
It's based on the water usage.
So that was my question to administration, if we could figure out that calculation and do a refund
Could we
for
not, yeah,
recreational.
could we not just take the wastewater off of that and take the wastewater off?
I'll
like
send
you
an
just-
email
yeah.
to Mike and Brian, and
I'm sure it's possible.
So there is some people within Muirfield, and I'm sure staff have heard this, that want that done when they're watering their grass, and I've explained there's no way you can differentiate between the two. This is something totally that is different. So if they come back to us and say, well, you did it for here, why don't you do it for me? There is, you're not your house where you can be watering your grass. Exactly right, and it's for the community. So
But delineating the usage is very different with this.
yes, but I know there's one resident there that is adamant that we have to do this for watering their grass. There's just no way in municipal government, I've never seen any of it, one that does it differently.
It's actually already factored in because we don't bill the entire water usage as wastewater. Is that correct? It's a percentage?
That's correct, through the chair. So we bill back wastewater at 70% of water, knowing that there's infiltration and irrigation, that sort of thing, spread off. As far as filling this or flooding this arena, this rink, we do utilize a meter that we have, fill it from a hydrant. So we'll be able to know exactly what volume we're putting in there. There's no, we're billing it, so there's no wastewater attached to that. I found out here from what we fill in Carsland, we fill it from the building, so that's why it's billed to that building. That's why there's a wastewater attached to it in the calculation. This one's going to be out of a hydrant, so we'll just fill it and know exactly the volume and bill that out.
but what I'll do is have them talk to me what month, like when they're doing it. So, but honestly, the use of the hall is very minimal.
You could probably
that month.
calculate, like,
so we
the
could do it
square
for that
footage of
for that month.
arena and the volume of water.
It'll have to be hand calculated and everything. So, I would think.
Consistent across the board.
Yeah.
So you'll bring a request for that?
Or, yeah,
to
I'll do one to
community?
Mike and Brian and then to community.
Suggestion for them, they could take a meter reading before they start flooding, and then they're done flooding. They could,
But, the hall just hasn't been used lately at all,
But just in perpetuity, you could do it that way. Simplify it.
so is that clear as mud?
We do need a resolution, so I believe what we are discussing would be a resolution to approve the development permit with amended conditions, including a condition that would outline an agreement regarding costs and indicating that it's a temporary development. And you had some other words that were good that I'm forgetting.
I'll read what I think we've
Perfect.
discussed. So condition number 7 will be permit issued for a 2-year term expiring October 13th, 2022, or no, October 6th. And county will be responsible for costs as itemized in the agreement dated blah, blah, blah. And I don't know what the agreement will be called, but I will add that in. Does that reflect what we've wanted?
To just say like a user agreement or
A
something.
user agreement, okay.
And then we could also address that any costs for moving would not be the county's responsibility. That could be in the agreement even. It wouldn't not necessarily have to be part of the development.
Yes, we don't have to list that into the conditions of a permit.
So you would just have a total like
Refer to
agreement
the-
that would address costs.
That's correct.
And then if that, yeah, that's better because then that can be fluid if it ever needed to be in the future or whatever. That's your motion?
That's my motion, as discussed.
Were you able to hear the proposed amended condition or additional condition?
Good. Who moved the motion? Is that Councillor Clausen?
Deputy Reeve
Reeve?
Clausen has moved to approve the development permit with the conditions listed and an additional condition as read by Development Officer Hayes. Oh, 2 additional conditions.
Thank you.
Councillor Kester, were you able to hear that all right? Are you clear on the motion?
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.34, letter to Minister of Municipal Affairs. At that meeting that we referenced earlier in Stettler, when we had the brief opportunity to speak with Minister Allard, I did have a longer opportunity to speak with her Chief of Staff, Jonathan Coley, and he had indicated that if we could send a request through him with some background information, he would try and arrange for us to have some more time to discuss our concerns regarding the growth board with Minister Allard. There was a draft letter there. Just looking if council has any edits they would like to see, anything they would like to see amended or changed.
I'm just wondering, should we have something referencing that we would love? It's imperative that we have an
in-person
meeting. I don't know if it should be attached to this letter, if it should be a paragraph or whatever. That's just my thoughts. The rest of it I really like.
So second paragraph, I'm writing to request a meeting, an in-person meeting.
Yes.
Just clarify.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be better.
Okay. And I can follow it up with an email to her Chief of Staff, just saying that we feel strongly that that's important and that we are comfortable, like a delegation of council, going to Edmonton to meet with her if necessary.
Perfect, yes.
You have the number of ratepayers, right?
It's in the attached. So there's an Appendix A that outlines
971.
Oh, 897 residents live in the zone, yeah, okay, good. Sorry, I didn't read.
And then we do have further information that administration has kind of discussed that we could bring in person. So we will have further kind of gravity to our position when we actually meet. So this just kind of outlines some of the high level she would have all of this information already. She did say that she has been briefed as she transitioned into the role and that she received. We were told not to resend information we had sent to Minister Madhu, that she was provided that. However, at our meeting yesterday, there does seem to be some misconceptions around some of the information around the growth board. So I do think it's important that we kind of send this summary. And I really like that there are some sort of solutions listed at the end as well, some alternative options. I would like council just to confirm, so administration wasn't quite sure. If you look at the end of the second paragraph, I said quite simply, it takes away autonomy from rural municipalities. Furthermore, we believe the CMRB contravenes the mandate of the board under the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board Regulation, Section 31E. So just for council's reference, that's part of the mandate that we're given in the regulation, and that clause states that we are responsible for promoting the economic well-being and competitiveness of the Calgary Metropolitan Region. So it's my position that the board itself contravenes that part of our mandate. But I want to make sure you agree with me that that's not pushing it a bit far.
Kind of going with what Eichert had said about the water issue, because the biggest player in there controls the most water. They control several municipalities because they provide them water, so they control their growth. So it's kind of got more control than they lobby votes whenever they want to. I've seen it firsthand. So.
Well, and there's evidence there as well. I think it's in here. So if you look at 4B, to me, that's evidence of that, where you're seeing approvals through the REF extending a development process by 58 days as it currently stands. Right now, we have no appeal mechanism, contrary to what we're also mandated to do by the legislation, and that will obviously be increased, where there's appeals we're already up to 96 days, and if you add a dispute resolution onto that, that's significant, and that detracts, in my opinion, from promoting economic well-being and competitiveness. Because if a developer looks at that, in addition to the municipal timelines that they have to deal with, this is red tape.
And that was brought up at a board meeting from, not Calgary Build, but they were talking the exact same thing.
Well, and administration has indicated they've heard it from developers. Other municipalities have indicated they've heard it from developers.
Every time you send something off to the minister dealing with the CMR, Calgary Regional CRM.
Yep, CMRB.
CRMB. We have in the past, and we keep doing it into the future. Refer back to that every single time, so they can never come back and say, well, it didn't bother you then, why is it bothering you now? It's been an issue from day one. And you bring that back every single time you reference it.
Which part?
That we've been
Just this whole argument. Yeah. Yes, it's a historical issue for sure. Okay, that was one. Okay.
Good.
If council is comfortable, we would just need a motion directing for the letter to be sent as presented.
I'll move that letter be sent.
Councillor Eichert has moved.
With that amendment of an in-person.
Yeah, paragraph 2.
Any other questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.41, Transportation and Agriculture Report.
Morning, Council.
Good morning.
Page 139 of the package, you'll see the Transportation and Ag Report for September. Just some highlights on it. Their construction crews are out finished the road construction now, so they've been moved to grading the fire hall. Just finished, as you see, the Speargrass playground grading and pathway. And now, with today's approval, they've been moving over to Muirfield to level that site and get a skating rink for the folks out there. After that, they'll be moving into pit activities, some stripping, grading, and reclamation work. With the weather turning cold, we're also having the hamlet or the culvert and oiling crews moving into culvert work. A lot of cold weather. Now that the water's not flowing anymore, the culverts are open. We start doing our culvert work around this time. Extend that out till about the middle of December is what we're planning on. The utilities group. So we did close the tenders for the lagoons and lift station, and got a lot, I think around 15 submittals for that, so a really good response on that. We awarded the contracts to, we split the contract into two, so we awarded the earthworks to NIB Developments, and we awarded the lift station to Parcon. So they have been awarded, the contracts are being signed, and work is to start in the next few weeks here. Good news, we came in about 15% below our estimates on that budget, so great response and good competition on this tender here. So good news for the community for sure. Just on the ag side, we are finishing up the roadside mowing and doing some reclamation work on some slides and washouts that we've had here, and looking to bring in strychnine again for this fall. We've made an order for that of 500 cases, knowing that it's going to be going away in the next year or two, so there's still a lot of interest from the farmers out there to buy that, so we'll be starting that in the next few weeks. So that's my report. Any questions? I'm here to answer them.
I haven't had a chance to go up and look at what's going on west of Dallin, where they at with that, if they found what caused it.
Yeah, so through the chair, that's speaking of just west of Dallin, we had a major slide. The road caved in, basically. It's basically a sand seam is what we found. We went down about 5 or 6 meters, I think, and found a really substantial seam that the water was flowing through and shifting and rotating all the land underneath it. So we got a lot of big equipment out there and dug it all out, and I think they're probably by the end of this week should be closing it up, ready to open the road back up. So yeah, nothing that we've seen it before, but nothing we've seen in this area for a while. So
And it had, and that's what some of the questions I got, and I told them, as far as we know, it had nothing to do with the construction that we did in there 7, 8, 9 years ago either. That was...
No, because that construction only went down a few feet. This was a fairly deep rotation of the earth there that everything just shifted on this one sand seam and carried the earth with it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I got a question on the sidewalk replacement.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a part of our pilot project?
Yes.
Or are we trying that again?
So we did 2 pilot projects this year, one in Carsland and one in Gleason. Actually, a larger pilot project and a smaller one. We invited 2 different sets of locals. I will be bringing a report back to the next PNP meeting. Sorry, not the October meeting. It'll be in November on the results of that process. So.
Good question.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and there is that resolution that Councillor Eicher had made back in the spring, I believe, or maybe it was early summer. That's still on the council resolution tracker to kind of be resolved. So that's definitely still on our radar.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Any other questions for transportation or agriculture?
Are those pilot projects completed?
The Gleason one, it said, was post.
The sidewalk, they both have been completed, yeah.
Yeah.
The Carsland and Gleason, yeah.
Any other questions? A motion to accept the report as information? Councillor Armstrong.
So moved.
Councillor Armstrong has moved. Any other questions? All in favor? Sorry, is any councillor opposed? I've done pretty good at remembering. Yeah. Is any councillor opposed? I'm sorry. Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.42, encroachment agreement, Muirfield.
Okay, thank you. On page 143, you'll see the request for decision for an encroachment agreement in the Lakes of Muirfield development. Basically, this is a request to have a extension of some structures over top of our utility right-of-way that we have through one of the lots there. This was brought up during a certificate of compliance that we typically see through the county. And we reviewed it. We have a storm main in this utility right-of-way. We don't see any issues with granting this encroachment.
Council's wishes. Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved the recommendation.
Yes.
Any questions or debate? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.43, Muirfield wastewater hauling. I'm probably most excited about this of all day.
For sure. We all are, definitely. So through the chair, the page 155 of your package is the RFD for Muirfield wastewater hauling. So council is well aware we took over the operations of the Muirfield development in April of this year. Part of that development taking over of that was taking over the water and wastewater operations, and currently the Muirfield development does not have a final long-term solution for wastewater. So what the development has been doing, what the developer through the Homeowners Association has been doing in the past is hauling all of the water, all of the wastewater from the development, generated from the development to a treatment facility. It was in Strathmore and sometimes in Calgary, depending on the situation. So we had the request come in a few months ago to take over this ownership and operations of the wastewater, and we have been utilizing a contractor to date, a Calgary contractor that is a long-term relationship with the developer. They've been utilizing them for the last decade. Basically taking the wastewater, it's distributed from the collection system into a storage site on the northeast portion of the development. It's force mained, pumped into the hamlet of Dalroy, which is just west of the development here. And then from there, this contractor would come in, pick up 3 to 4 times a day the wastewater, and truck it to Strathmore for treatment. So we were watching this over the last couple of months, analyzing how we could do it better. We did a few test runs with Carsland Lagoons, had the contractor go down there, pump into or discharge into our lift station there. Found that we had no issues with flows into that, didn't overwhelm the system, didn't cause any issues there, so that's great news. What you'll see on page 158 is our analysis of the options that we have here. So you see on the left there's the external hauling. So basically that's a contractor utilizing the system, about 2,600 cubic meters of wastewater a month we estimate. So we have a rate charged to us of $13.70 a cubic meter for the wastewater. We have a disposal fee of $2.10 from Strathmore and a flat rate overall charge from Strathmore of $600 that's distributed back to the residents. So this is our option for if we were to continue on with the external hauling. We would still have WRC, we wouldn't utilize WRC because this would be going to Strathmore. So we figure it's about $16.03 a cube is the actual cost of that. So the internal hauling options are, we have 2 different options here, one utilizing Strathmore as a disposal site and one utilizing Carsland as our disposal site with as you can see the loads are the same, 2,600 cubes. We have a hauling, so this action plan basically brings into utilizing our own staff, purchasing our own equipment, and hauling internally here. So our action plan is to buy one new tractor trailer unit, the tractor unit portion of it. Looking at tankers, they're in the couple $100,000 range, so we're not looking at a new one. We've been researching for months. We found quite a few good used tanker trailers that we can utilize for this. So this includes the purchase of that and the maintenance, the fuel, all that. I have a different analysis that I didn't include in here that shows all that different costing towards it. So this is a very, very full-time job. This is, as they do right now, they truck Monday to Friday, 10-hour days, and they're nonstop to keep that system operating. So because of that, we've budgeted for 2 trailers, 1 truck right now, but knowing that we have we have the ability to pull from our existing fleet for if any problems, because we can't let this thing go down for an hour without seeing effects on it. So we want to make sure we're hitting it with the ground running kind of thing. And so we've tried to think of every situation that would come up and answer to that. We also are going to look at utilizing the contractor currently just for backup if we need it. So we'll have quite a few coveralls to make sure we don't come into problems with this. So looking at the analysis, like I say, the discharging into Strathmore, we estimate around $850 per cube is what we would be the true cost of that. And utilizing Carsland, you can see that we have WRC there just a couple hours a week just to kind of maintain the lift station, just to watch it to make sure that it's not being overwhelmed or that the product that's brought in is not an issue for the treatment of it, doing maybe potentially further testing. We put that 2 hours in there. It adds 35 cents per cube, so not a huge increase, but we thought it was important to include that. So the request today is to have council approval to move forward on this action plan of basically ending our contract with the current hauler and bringing in our own equipment and staff to maintain the system.
Will that affect the volume of the lagoon in Carsland?
It will. So this is a short to long-term plan, knowing that our ultimate solution for this is a standalone system or a regional system in Muirfield. This is not a long-term solution. If we're still doing this in 10 years, I'd be disappointed for sure, because we want to have something in place in the next 3 to 5 years that takes us away. So knowing that the development pressures that we do have in Carsland Speargrass, we should be able to work with that, knowing that those won't come online for quite a few years, or at least a couple of years, right, before that actually starts contributing into our system. You'll see that I'm still going to utilize Strathmore for discharge on this. I don't want to eliminate that relationship. I think it's important to have that option if we need to. I mean, if we have an issue with Carsland, we want to have a backup plan for that as well. So I still want to, at least 1 day a week, discharge into Strathmore just to keep that going, so it's not a surprise. We know the procedures and that sort of thing. So if we do get to the point where we still don't have a solution in 5 years, we do still have the option of other disposal methods that isn't Carsland.
As long as we know that any development that goes there would be rated as first before putting in from Muirfield.
Yeah, good question.
The one question I have, because Strathmore's disposal is a contract of some sort, as long as they're aware of what we're doing, I guess, and because I don't think that's been renegotiated with them for quite some time.
No.
So that could trigger that, the reduction, because I'm sure they're counting on that revenue stream. I'm okay with it staying in Strathmore for the amount of difference in price, because it's still substantially less. But it's something to talk to them about to see. Maybe they don't want it. I know from the previous developer, there were some times on the weekends where they had some issues and I had to get involved to try to they refused accepting of it. And it was mostly to do, from what I understood, was with the hauling contractor. Being that we're doing the service, that's going to provide them a much greater level of comfort than they ever had before, because municipal employees tend to, not working for product.
We're hauling from one place.
We're hauling from one place. Those trucks are dedicated.
There's no way that we can get in cross-contamination.
So,
that kind of stuff.
just make sure that we talk to Strathmore, I guess, is my thing. They use that revenue. I know it's what it is. And yeah, so I'm okay with either of those two internal hauling.
Nice thing about Carsland, though, is there is some revenue generation there at that $1.36.
Yeah.
Right. So that would help. This sort of helps. And I understand it would definitely be, but we have to have that communication with the town. Know that we have to have a standby position just in case something wonderful happens in Carsland.
Because that agreement was with the developer and Muirfield Development and Strathmore. It's had nothing to do with the county, so that could change it. That's the only, whether or not that's a discussion we have to have with them. Council, I don't know.
I think it would start with administration, and if it needs to go to the political level, let us
We're
know.
not blindsided, that's all.
Yeah.
Have you had any conversations with Strathmore administration
Not on
yet?
this specifically. We have talked about wastewater and our options for Muirfield with that. But no, through the chair, like you say, we definitely want to keep a really good relationship with Strathmore on this. I mean, we both benefit from this relationship. So.
And like I said, only problems I ever heard of was with the hauling, because it was an external contractor, and questions of, was that product from there, not from outside? And there was some times when some plastics got in there and there was some issues, and it was definitely not from Muirfield. But we won't have that problem because those trucks would just do that. So.
Just for my information, how big is that tank? How many days, like how long, if we had a blizzard come through and it was like, is there 7 days capacity, storage capacity in that thing, or like?
It's not really a tank. It was designed as a force main, so a force main is a pump that pumps it into a lift station. That's the design. It wasn't really designed to store water for any length of time. It's just designed.
So it's actually pulling stuff right out of the line then?
Yeah, it pumps into Delroy. So basically all that stuff sits stagnant in there, and it's designed to have some kind of regular flow.
Okay, so there's not a big septic. Okay.
And talking to, at the RMA central meeting we had, I sat with Reeve Belkey and their CAO, and they didn't even know that we had taken over Muirfield, and the CAO told me, he says, we still have all the equipment for that lift station sitting in one of our sheds somewhere. So they have everything to build it into a lift station. So they're going to be talking to us about the future, now that we're at the table. So.
Actually going to do what they promised they were going to do for 20 years?
I think they would have greater comfort doing it with Wheatland County versus, I won't say that, but yes.
I think administration is exploring options, and we can, when we have an opportunity to as well.
Because there is infrastructure that was put in the ground there that we're going to be utilizing with Rocky View, and that's why I mentioned to them that, we may be looking at having different haulers in there, because it is technically in their municipality, right? So we have to make sure they know what we're doing too. So.
Good point.
How far is Delroy from
Muirfield?
no, Wheatland County? Like into
kilometers, I'd say.
Miles?
Just a couple of miles, yeah.
Back in the time, they had, Rocky View had visions of expanding that and having a regional system, and Delroy was tying in and all that stuff. Catherine was going to tie in. It was a big development.
So how much would a lagoon in the county?
I think that's what
we're going to look at. See,
Okay.
and
Mike is looking at with his team, just exploring all the options on that side.
Yeah, so through the chair, like I say, we have given our engineering consultant the go-ahead to do a pre-design on that. We've already seen the review I sent a few months ago with the different options. Now we're looking at the lagoons. With this new information with Rocky View, we are going to be talking with them as far as what their ideas are. I have heard inklings of their development.
Solution could be come forward fairly soon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, like I
That makes
say,
me
this
feel
is-
better.
Just on it, going to the Rocky View side, they designed that line from Balzac to incorporate this. And this was a feeder into it, was part of it. So they have that engineering there. Whether or not that value was good for us, I don't know.
It's only supposed to be there they had a 5-year contract to start with, and in that 5 years, they were going to have it all tied in, and it would be free-flowing through the system.
But whether or not it makes wastewater $20 a cubic meter, or, whatever's the most best for our residents is what we have to do. But going back to this, thank you for this. I appreciate it. The residents will be extremely happy when we get this going forward, and it gives us some control and some control of costs as well for these people, and it's all cost recovery too, I think. Right? So
I don't care which system we use as long as it's the internal system. I don't care if it goes to Strathmore or Carseland.
Right,
Either
yeah.
one of them is a substantial break for the residents there.
Yeah, almost half of what they were spending before.
I would think, though, that Strathmore would want to, if you're doing both, more of a scheduled, like one load a day goes to Strathmore. I don't know. Whatever you want to, whatever they would do, but I would think they'd want more of a.
yeah, EPCOR wants to know when it's coming because it's an extra load in their system. So
Right.
that's where they have to let them know. Yes,
Yeah.
they may say, well, we want it these days or whatever. So.
We'll let administration
Yep.
figure out the
Thanks.
operation side. This is very good news for Lakes of Muirfield. I think I'm very grateful for this work.
It's going to be half the price.
And I guess just to add a little bit, we talked about cost savings. Just through the chair, we are looking to do a little bit of a review on this before we bring forward a change to the rates that we have right now. We just want to make sure that we don't jump ahead before we know what the true costs are. If anything comes up, it'll probably just be a month or two before you see a rate revision come back before council for approval. So just so you're aware of that.
And you built in, obviously, you've spoken to several redundancies, but you've also spoken in capital or built-in capital replacement and all that.
For sure, yeah.
Perfect. I just assumed you did.
Yeah, amortization across the lifespan of the vehicles and all that sort of thing.
So you're looking for a resolution with 3 parts. Yep.
I'll make the motion that council approve the recommendation plan described in this request for the decision to initiate the hauling of Muirfield wastewater in-house, utilizing county-owned equipment and staff. Further, that the county approve the revision to the organizational chart for an additional staff member. Further, that council approve the purchase of capital equipment required in the amount not to exceed $270,000.
There's a motion on the floor. Questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
We're going to move to 5.1, correspondence. We received a letter from the Strathmore and Wheatland County Christmas Hamper Society. Outlining how many hampers they did last year, the ratio to Wheatland County. I believe
Just give that to staff as part of our budget process,
Yes, and just Brian from administration, just for council's information, the last couple of years we have passed a council resolution to make a donation to the Christmas Hamper Society for $3,300. That's kind of been something that we've done every year, and it is in the budget this year as well.
that comes from donations.
Yeah, it's a budget line under administration. It's GL code 21202277000. Just donations to other organizations.
Donations to others, right?
so. Are you looking for that recommendation today? If you are, I'll put it on the floor that Same as we did last year.
This isn't the only thing that we donate to a council motion, is it?
Christmas hamper.
Well, like there are other organizations that
Yeah,
we donate
like
to
Stars and
council and that. So this falls under the same deal as.
Yeah.
we looked at that
I
line
know,
item.
yeah,
was-
I'm just trying
It
to
was
find the
budgeted for
report.
80,000, I think, that line item.
I'd have to take a look at the budget. I was looking at it the other day. I believe it got cut down a little bit at the final approval for the operating budget this year. And that was due to a reduction in the handy bus donation. It went from 35 down to 10. So I think that line item got reduced down to around 48,000.
Yeah, and there was a report, I'm not finding it fast enough, but there was a report on how what all that went to as well that was circulated to us. I think for timing of their season, it would be good if we are prepared to consider it today. I did ask that they send it as soon as possible, just so that they can be prepared for purchasing for their season.
Like I said, I'll move that we, the same as we did last year.
Okay, so Councillor Armstrong has moved to donate $3,300 consistent with last year's contribution. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. There's the letter in the package from Wheatland Housing Management Board. Councillor Custer also referenced this information in his report. You'll see the engagement schedule is included as well. So, and I would echo Councillor Custer, just impressing upon all of council the importance of engaging in these sessions whenever you can, and if you can, through whatever kind of networks or mechanisms you have, also just to amplify this messaging, get it out there. It would be good, I think, to hear from as many people in the region as possible, and we're not just targeting necessarily seniors or people that might be considering living in the lodge. We want to hear from this lodge has served us for 60 years, so it's important that all of us weigh in on that and shape what our vision might be for seniors housing in the future. Schedule is there, and then there was also a letter circulated that we received.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just received notification that the website that will be used for the website's working. There's a link on that website is up and running, so you can check it out. It's barryarchitecture.ca. When you load up the main website, on the far right corner is a tab says community. You click on that, then Wheatland, click on that, and you're there. So that's just been put up.
Yeah, I just went to it. It looks really good. Thanks for that.
Just a comment, would it make sense, Glenn, for your board to put something together as a information item and give it to our staff to put in the county connector?
I don't know if there's...
We've asked the county, and they've agreed to keep a link open for the website so everybody in the whole county gets the same thing. When the county connector comes along and they would like to have an article in the county connector, yeah, let us know, and we'll definitely put something in. But the next 5 weeks, this information is updated weekly, and it's very fluent. The process is, after the public engagement is done, they will start the schematic design and site selection, and hopefully that would be done by this year. So that's the timeline we're on. So yeah, we get the county connector, we can definitely put it in there. We'll take every opportunity that we can.
I think the current county connector is done, is ready. Right. So So I like the idea of just having information in there. The last day of the month. I think there's one session after that, right? Summary session. There's a session 5 in November, so you could include maybe the November potentially. So Councillor Kester, maybe the Housing Board Communication Committee or Building Committee that's in charge of communications could reach out and just, I know we already talked about exploring every option and just see how that might be utilized. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I'll certainly consider it and bring it up. We have a board meeting on Thursday, which corresponds to the first night of our community engagement. Yeah, should be interesting.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, so I don't believe we need any action from that, although there was a request. We ask that each stakeholder in council open the meeting to small groups of community members at your site. We suggest small groups 6 to 8 people attend at one time. A Wheatland Housing Management Body Council member will be there to help you through the first session. I'm not sure if we feel like we want to do that. Do something here on each of those nights?
I don't think this same letter was sent around to the other municipalities. I haven't heard of a need at Wheatland County, and I haven't really heard of any need at the other municipalities either. Some of the seniors groups are going to get together and watch it themselves. If they need help running the computer or not, I don't know. I haven't heard the request. I haven't heard any formal request coming in. That being said, this letter has just been put out really Monday. We'll see if it gets more fluent, but really time right now I haven't heard. And I believe after the first session, people will be practiced enough they can get on it. Our only concern was some people in the county, A, have poor internet, and B, don't own a computer. But we'll see how that goes.
So why don't we say, as we're sharing this information, if we're getting feedback from people where people are experiencing challenges either with access to technology or that type of thing, just to bring that back and we can consider facilitating that if necessary, if we're hearing that from people. And there's not an alternative. I know some of the libraries have. Yeah, so just to clarify, the session will run that night, but it will be accessible. You can go and watch it anytime. So you could go when the library is open, watch it, submit your feedback. I'm not sure that all the libraries have access to their technology because of COVID, but where you can, or perhaps family members can help facilitate that within cohorts or that type of thing. So if people hear of a need, please let us know and we'll see if we can facilitate something.
So it'll be up for, I believe, till Monday morning, 8 o'clock. They'll shut off comments. You can still watch it, but you won't be able to comment. Then the comments starting Monday morning will be amassed and put together for the next Thursday. And that's how it'll go every week.
Sounds great. We also had a letter, Glenn, I know you've received it via email and it was circulated to all of council via email. I can't remember last night or this morning. Last night, I think, by Brian. From the CAO of Wheatland Housing Management Board regarding board members.
Take that as information for now and add it to our organizational meeting.
Yeah, for sure.
I just had some questions about this letter. Is this common? Like, and is it board direction to send a letter like this? Like, we're elected officials. We can appreciate the magnitude of what our fellow elected officials are sitting in any board. And a CAO's role is to be neutral in anything like this. So I was always taught that a CAO stays out of elected officials' business.
That's why I said refer it to our organization.
Yeah, but I
meeting
just,
and have the discussion
yeah.
at that time.
I have a hard time with that, so.
The CEO sent this letter off. They've had a very trying year with the COVID. I don't know how many change orders from the province come down. And I think she was looking ahead till next year when it's election year and the board is changing next year. So I believe she's just asking for some stability in the board. Nothing else is stable with the COVID, with the province, and they're just looking for some stability to deal with till next year when everyone knows it's election year and there will be changes. I believe that was her reasoning. She's just asking for stability for another year. It's not common practice, you're right.
We don't, yeah, and I understand what you're saying, but we don't have all of council here either, so that's why I'm putting a motion on the floor to just refer this to our organizational meeting and have the discussion then, and go forward from there. Looking for an answer. I can't give her that answer to you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you put a motion on the floor to refer this? I mean, I don't even know that we need to refer it to the organizational meeting. We could accept it as information now, and then, or you want it to be addressed at the organizational
So
meeting?
that they know that we are gonna,
Okay.
yeah. Then you can respond to them and say, yes, we're gonna deal with it at our.
So for clarity, this was not a board decision to send this letter. This was a CAO doing this.
I don't think.
Correct.
Okay.
It wasn't, the board didn't discuss this. I don't recall
I'm just asking
a
'cause,
discussion
yeah.
around it.
Because usually a CAO doesn't, you have a board decision to do something. Okay.
There's a motion on the floor from Councillor Armstrong to refer the letter for consideration at our organizational meeting in 2 weeks. Any other questions or discussion?
I think just one more thing since we're talking about the lodge and the CAO. The staff at the lodge has to be highly commended for the effort they've done and put forward in the lodge in protecting the residents, in the policies, just the sheer volume of work, the extra work in sanitizing and keeping the residents happy. We are, a lot of times when the province was coming down with new regulations, we were already there. And I think we were, in some cases, used as an example. We have a management team that the whole county should be proud of, yeah. So my wholehearted thanks to their effort and to the residents of the county. Yeah, thank you.
I don't remember if we voted. Thank you for that, Councillor Kester. There is a motion on the floor from Councillor Armstrong. Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Looking for one more motion to accept the other correspondence as information.
So moved.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Would council be okay if we did our in-camera session now? Councillor Armstrong has indicated he has an appointment this afternoon, and so we could just work through a little bit longer. I don't think we'll be, we have a few topics in camera, but not a significant number. Is council okay with that? So before we move, prior to us moving into closed session, Can each counselor please affirm that they will be in a private setting where they will be the only person able to access confidential information in order to uphold our council code of conduct? Reeve Link can. Deputy Reeve Clausen?
Yes, I can.
Councillor Baker?
Yes.
Councillor Eichert?
Yes.
Councillor Kester?
Yes.
Councillor Armstrong? I will move us into closed session. Is anybody opposed?